Hey, Larry Elder here. Thank you for listening to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt and KHNC.
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? Good morning. How you doing? This is the Bucky Dillon Show, and it is so great to be with you yet again on another beautiful, beautiful Colorado morning. Guys, I keep telling you, this is a collaborative between myself and the freedom-loving, free-thinking, Patriot community right here in Northern Colorado, or tuning in to the live stream, Facebook.com/Liberty Revolt Media, YouTube.com/Liberty Revolt. Join me in the comment section. Help steer the conversation. I sure do love hanging out with you guys. The sun is typically rising right around this time, but maybe because of the daylight savings switch, it might still be dark. I'll have to get used to that. I'm in a new room because the control room microphone has been giving us troubles on the cold mornings. Be careful out there on the roads if you're driving to work. Black ice on I-25 and the other roads. How do I know? Because I almost crashed twice on the way here this morning. So thank the Lord for my safety. Guys, I started telling you guys in the first hour what I've been up to around here. And you're going to say, Bucky, just what have you been up to around here? I've been up to the newsletter, and I gave you guys an idea of what that looks like, and hopefully it's something that you would want to be a part of. Today, I'm going to touch again on my article. What does it mean to be a patriot? So this is what I'm putting in the newsletter to kind of give people an idea, and let me know what your thoughts are on this. Who is KHNC, and what does it mean to be a patriot? Because we dare call ourselves patriots. I know. There is a fascinating subgroup of Americans that walk the line between being incredibly critical and dissuaded by the United States federal government and the money interests that dominate it, and yet proudly revere the Stars and Stripes. They wrestle the dichotomy between free-spirited rebellion and patriotism. They often cringe and protest at the excesses of the United States military-industrial complex, and yet nobody supports the troops more vigilantly. Disproportionately, they are veterans and members of law enforcement themselves. They condemn racial prejudice, and they condemn the identity group obsessed woke scolds because they understand that to be a patriot is to love all Americans and to judge them with grace by the contents of their character and by their individual actions. They understand that patriotism is not a love of the geography, and it's only partially a love of our founding ideals. It's certainly not a blind allegiance to the federal government or its subsidiary agencies. To be a patriot is to love the people and to harbor a will to strengthen the country by investing in and maximizing the opportunities for all Americans while attempting to maximize and preserve their individual freedoms. They resist cancel culture, not because they celebrate the worst abuses of our freedom of speech and assembly, but because the answer to ugly speech is more speech. And they understand that ignorance and insensitivity is actually the default state of human beings, and that those human beings need to be allowed to think and to speak. They understand that when speech is restricted and society is unforgiving, we can't grow, and that these well intentioned government regulations on speech are like any other regulations. They will be quickly and reliably weaponized by the powerful and the well connected. They are fun loving, unassuming, hardworking Americans who set aside their own problems every day. And Lord knows we all have problems, and a lot of them. They set aside their own problems every day to show up to work and make a genuine attempt to solve the problems of others in hopes of being compensated for serving the needs of others and in order to make a decent life for themselves and their families. All of the infrastructure around us decays and falls apart over time automatically without any effort. But it is only rebuilt by deliberate and often painstaking effort. So they don't make excuses for people who live pathologically. They instead attempt to foster opportunities and incentives for people to develop themselves into useful and productive people. They strive to live in a way that their fellow citizens have wives and children and diverse cultures and dreams will appreciate sharing the community with them. These are the patriots that we at 1360 KHNC strive to be and strive to build an audience and a community with. KHNC is not a Republican or a Democrat affiliate. We have a loyalty to the freedoms proposed by the founding ideals and reject authoritarianism and domination in all of its forms. We have our own personal opinions, but we also have a tolerance for the freedoms of others. After all, isn't that the whole point in a free society? Isn't that the whole point in a democracy? You're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show right here on 1360 KHNC.
It is not because men have made laws that life, liberty, and property exist. On the contrary, it is because life, liberty, and property existed beforehand that men made laws in the first place. What then is law? It is the collective organization of the individual right to lawful defense and punishing injustice. Frederick Bastiat, The Law.
This is Sam Shook, Navy Vet and Medicare Specialist. I just want to thank the KHNC listeners for their support and trust in me as their Medicare specialist. If you are currently on Plan F, we are in a window of opportunity that can save you a lot of money towards your monthly premium. Please contact me at 970-413-4939. If you are getting into Medicare soon or are already enrolled and have questions, please call me at 970-413-4939. Again, thanks KHNC listeners.
Hi, KHNC listeners. Jerry Axum, real estate agent with Sears Real Estate. Established in 1972, locally owned, and our office is in Greeley. Growing up in Greeley, I am very familiar with the community and surrounding towns. I'd like to talk to you about your real estate questions, needs, or wants. Jerry Axum, 970-576-1089, 576-1089, or jerry@searsrealestate.com.
Chinese state-run media are celebrating the apparent success of Joe Biden and the mainstream news outlets, which act as nothing more than the communications branch of the Democrat Party. Among the many things we are doing to become more engaged in the culture, 1360khnc.com now has a blog page for the sharing of hard-hitting conservative content. Help us break the left's domination of media by becoming a content contributor. Reach out to contact at 1360khnc.com to learn more.
欢迎收听 KHNC 广播电台 Bucky Dillon 早安秀，大家的早安广播，谢谢。
谢谢东西，你是好漂亮，我爱你。So that's me giving a little shout out to my beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful, lovely wife who makes everything else in my life totally possible. So thank the Lord for that woman. She is a tremendous blessing. And gosh, I just need to say it again. I love my wife. Man, that woman makes my world go round. She makes everything I do possible. That is the foundation. So thank you, God, for giving me that blessing, which I absolutely do not deserve. Guys, the newsletter, learn how you can become a part of it. I'm going to have a page in it that is dedicated to Northern Colorado politics, events, and trends. And what is going to be in this section of the newsletter is all of our representatives in Colorado and their contact information, city council, legislative, all of it, right? As much as I can muster in a full page magazine. And all of the upcoming events from the public, from the meetings between the public and the school district, so that Colorado parents can make suggestions to our teachers and criticize or celebrate the curriculum being taught. I have a feeling there will be a little bit more critical opinions than there are supportive opinions, my opinion. But it will also have the upcoming votes, the upcoming city council meetings, and things that you can attend and make your voice heard. So if you're interested in becoming a part of the newsletter, supporting the newsletter, get a hold of me, Bucky Dillon at khnc.net, and learn how you can get involved, how you could help. I'm going to give you guys an update on the weather. And I'm going to give you guys an update. It is about 30 degrees right now. It is chilly. Less. It's 21 degrees right now. And it will not get even up to 40 today. Around 5 o'clock, it's going to get partly cloudy, and it's going to stay cloudy all night. So hopefully you guys are staying warm. Drive safe. The IRS will apparently be delaying the tax filing due date. The IRS is apparently delaying the tax filing due date until May 17th. So Americans will be getting extra time to prepare their taxes. The Internal Revenue Service says it's delaying the traditional tax filing deadline from April 15th to May 17th, over a month. So that's kind of cool. There has been an increased number of hate crimes, reportedly committed against Asian Americans. It's a hate crime. This is the headline from the Denver Post. It's a hate crime, quote, Atlanta killings stoke fear, concern in Denver area's Asian American communities. Mass shooting comes amid rise in bias-motivated attacks against Asian Americans during the pandemic. The shooting deaths of 8 people, most of them women of Asian descent, at 3 spas in the Atlanta area raised concerns and rekindled fears Wednesday within the Denver area's Asian American communities. 6 victims were identified as Asian and 7 were women. The Tuesday's mass shooting comes amid a rise in bias-motivated attacks against Asian Americans during COVID-19's pandemic. The suspect, a 21-year-old white male, told police the killings were not racially motivated, but claimed to have a sex addiction. In Colorado, anxiety about attacks against Asian Americans has risen, and the community's reaction to this week's slayings has been palpable. Fran Campbell, a Filipino American and president of and CEO of the Denver-based Asian Chamber of Commerce, said she was inundated by phone calls Wednesday morning. It's a hate crime. That is how our community is looking at it, Campbell said of the killings. I have been hearing a lot of fear, mostly anger, and we are trying to figure out an appropriate response. It is a concern. Margaret Choi, a Denver-based immigration attorney and president of the Organization of Chinese Americans in Colorado, said members of the local Asian American community have been raising concerns about, quote, racially motivated violence against Chinese and Asians as a whole throughout the past year. This really is getting very serious, she said. Our whole community is shook. She blames Donald Trump's use of the name China virus as a flashpoint. That's what she says. But apparently there has been a 149% increase of they say it's anti-Asian hate crimes in America since the pandemic in 16 of the nation's largest cities in 2020. Of the cities cited nationally by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, 49 hate crimes was reported in 2019, followed by 122 in 2020. And I have been hearing a lot about this. What's interesting to me, though, is they try to blame it on Donald Trump. And I don't see significant evidence that by suggesting that this is the China virus necessarily is driving this. When you look at where these attacks are happening, it's 16 of the nation's largest cities, not known for tremendous amount of Trump support, I will say. And they haven't covered this, but unfortunately, a lot of the attacks against Asian Americans have been committed by other minority groups, primarily. It is what it is, particularly in California. But it is something definitely to be concerned about. I will say that when it comes to acts of violence, unless there is absolute evidence of racism, I don't think it's that great to necessarily attribute to racism random acts of violence without significant evidence. And people say that there have been a rise in hate crimes in the last few years, but to be fair, there's been a drastic increase in reporting centers and motivation and incentives to report. And so that does, when you are measuring more, you find more. And I'm not trying to justify any of this in any sense. All hate crimes are evil, period. All racism and racial prejudice, evil, period. And it is anti-American, anti-patriotic to harbor racial prejudice. But it is one of those conversations where we have to be very careful about the narratives that we are constructing, because sometimes if we are exaggerating or overemphasizing things that there might not be tremendous evidence for, it does make things worse in some sense. And I'm not denying that there hasn't been an increase in animosity towards Asian Americans throughout the course of this pandemic. Human beings, they're wild animals and they do crazy things, and it is a real tragedy. And I wish we could do something about it to make these kind of issues resolve themselves in a peaceful kind of way. It is truly sad. 21 states file lawsuit against Biden to overturn the controversial canceling of the Keystone XL pipeline, according to the Daily Wire. 21 states have filed a lawsuit against Democrat President Joe Biden over his controversial canceling of the Keystone XL pipeline, a decision that has sparked pushback even from Democrats who are not far left on energy policy. The lawsuit, filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas, alleges that Biden has exceeded his presidential authority by canceling the pipeline on his first day in office, a move that even angered Canada. The attorneys general argue that Biden exceeded his authority because, quote, of a provision Congress tucked into tax legislation in 2011 that required then President Barack Obama to either approve the pipeline within 60 days or issue a determination that it wasn't in the national interest, NBC News reported. Obama then rejected TransCanada, now TC Energy Corp, application weeks later, saying Congress gave him insufficient time, but allowing the company to reapply, which deferred the decision until after his re-election. Obama later rejected the application. President Donald Trump approved it, and Biden revoked the approval. The states that are suing Biden include Texas, Montana, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming. The lawsuit states in part, this is a quote from the lawsuit itself, revocation of the Keystone XL pipeline permit is a regulation of interstate and international commerce, which can only be accomplished as any other statute can, through the process of bicameralism and presentment. The president lacks the power to enact his, quote, ambitious plan to reshape the economy in defiance of Congress's unwillingness to do so. To the extent that Congress has delegated such authority, it would violate the non-delegation doctrine. But Congress has not delegated such authority. It sets specific rules regarding what actions the president could take about the Keystone XL pipeline and when the president, together with various senior executive officials, violated those rules. The action should be set aside as inconsistent with the Constitution and the Administrative Procedure Act 5 U.S.C. Since his first day in office, President Biden has made it his mission to undo all of the progress of the previous administration with complete disregard for the constitutional limits on his power. His decision to revoke the pipeline permit is not only unlawful, but it will also devastate the livelihoods of thousands of workers, their families, and their communities, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said in a statement. Quote, this administration continues to tout imaginary green energy jobs without any recognition that their actions in the real world will make it impossible for hardworking Americans to put food on the table. The power to regulate foreign and interstate commerce belongs to Congress, not the president. This is another example of Joe Biden overstepping his constitutional role to the detriment of Montanans, Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen said. You guys are listening to the Bucky Dillon Show right here on 1360 KHNC. I'll give you guys a breakdown of my opinion on the Keystone XL pipelines and the green energy agenda when we come back.
The globalists say resistance is futile. Will you choose to accept your slavery or declare your liberty? Find out how on Pac-Man and the Rev, Saturdays from 1 to 2. Sometimes the truth hurts.
Oh, beautiful.
Does the American flag offend you? Call 1-800-LEAVE-AMERICA. If not, call 970-460-8873 and book a fly fishing trip on the North Platte River. Come experience peak dry fly season this summer in the North Platte Valley, or chase big browns this fall through November. 8 hours on a drift boat, experienced guides, lunches and flies included. Visit trouttamers.com, and thank you for supporting KHNC.
Did the fire marshal take one look down your driveway and say, my guys aren't going down there? Or are there parts of it that just need a little more sun? Then call Affordable Tree at 970-568-6898. We can climb, cut, or trim your problems away, specializing in defensive space, upper and lower fire mitigation, forest health, plus we can save freshly hit beetle trees. So call us at 568-6898. That's 568-6898.
Hi, this is Mike Morris, owner of Warriors Revolution Tactical in Longmont. At Warriors Revolution, we have the largest selection of tactical gear and ammo in northern Colorado. But what many people may not know is that we now sell firearms. And even despite the recent run on firearms and ammunition, we have plenty of product in the store, including ARs, AKs, Glocks, SIGs, HK, and more. And don't forget all the bulk ammunition at the best prices in town. Need to do a private firearms transfer? We can do that too. I am a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and our team is made up of veterans and security experts, not a bunch of salesmen. Our team is trained and fought with much of the actual equipment we sell. And one thing you should know is that we support the foundations and principles this great country was founded upon. So if you need tactical gear, ammo, firearms, AR parts or upgrades, and even survival accessories, stop by and visit us on Ken Pratt Boulevard and Bowen Street in Longmont, or visit warriorsrevolution.com. That's warriorsrevolution.com.
Higher rates, lower rates, negative rates, bail-ins, bailouts, and so much more. You know why you need to own gold and silver. At the Patriot Trading Group, we're a different kind of company. We have no commission salespeople, no boiler room sales calls, no high-price spokesmen. We believe in treating you with honesty and respect and delivering you the best products at the best price. Buying or selling, call us at 800-951-0592 or go to our website at allamericangold.com.
Tune in Saturday mornings from 7 to 8 a.m. right here on the Roar of the Rockies, 1360 a.m. for the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. Get your garden started and growing successfully all summer long, every Saturday morning from 7 to 8 a.m.
The Bucky Dillon Show is a Liberty Revolt Media production. www.libertyrevoltmedia.com. So the Keystone XL pipeline and the green energy movement, so-called. What's the problem? And I'm going to include the Paris Climate Accords. Of course, this is another one of those silly, rhetorical international pacts that we hop into. Essentially, it's just a big group of the elite going out there and virtue signaling, while actually not really doing anything for the planet or regular people. What do I mean by this? The Paris Climate Accords, first off, and then I'll touch on the Keystone Pipeline, and then I'll touch on some of the flaws of the so-called green energy movement. And let me start off by saying, I absolutely believe we should be investing in green technologies and renewable energies. Absolutely. And I do believe that human beings have an effect on the climate. Right? How much of an effect? Well, I think that's a little bit yet to be determined, but I think the broad consensus is enough to suggest that we do have certainly and effect, and it would be better for the planet if we tried to clean up our act a little bit. Obviously, taking carbon out of the ground and throwing it into the atmosphere at the rate that we are doing probably isn't that great. It does kind of upset the natural balance of things. But to be fair, volcanoes emit as much in one eruption as human beings do all year long. Now, that being said, volcanoes aren't going to stop going off just because we are. And so, it does add up, right? The Paris Climate Accords. Well, let me just set the stage here. You see these signs in people's yards, right? They say, "Oh, love is love," and "no human is illegal," and "Black Lives Matter," and all of these things. Science is real is one of those slogans on the sign. I don't think most people understand what any of the slogans on these signs actually mean in practice. I think they just hear it and it sounds real nice, and so they kind of go along with it. They're like, well, yeah, I can hop on board with that. I don't think they understand that there are financial and political objectives being pushed behind these things that don't really match up with the on the face of it meaning of a lot of these terms. Science is real. So this is obviously a reference to the issue of climate change, an issue that the left feels comfortable with and has allied itself, has tried to make the case that it has allied itself with the science. I'm going to say this is disingenuous because although the right tends to acknowledge more of the limitations of our scientific understanding and the corruption introduced by political and financial interests, we also have a lot of people on the right who are just outright deniers. It's all fake. It's all BS. It's all meant to control you because if they can tax carbon, then they can tax everything. I'm sure there's a little bit of both, guys. I'm sure the truth is somewhere in the middle. But most prominent conservatives agree that CO2 contributes to global warming and that rapidly increasing global temperatures present a very real problem, and thus reducing our carbon emissions is a noble objective. I would say that conservatives are largely less skeptical about the actual science and probably a lot more skeptical about the rhetoric and the policy prescriptions being proposed by the climate alarmists. These solutions have gotten more alarmist. They've gotten more unworkable, more unpractical, unsustainable, unscientific, and drastically more authoritarian with each election. The narrative of climate change and the political ramifications thereof has become one of the most contentious issues in the cultural conversation, and few topics are so widely misunderstood, dogmatic, and as emotionally charged and even morally charged as this one. Part of the reason is how rarely science actually permeates the actual discourse on all sides and fronts. So ask yourself, or anyone around you, or certainly any politician, and this would include President Biden and AOC, what the second law of thermodynamics is, for a quick reality check on how in tune our politicians actually are with the science. So I will contend the fossil fuel industry absolutely does receive massive government subsidies and uses billions to lobby against fossil fuel regulations. And it's something that we need to be careful about. It's something that we need to be critical of and be very careful about. On the other side of that, there is also huge financial investments coming from people who believe in this green energy agenda. But an ignorance of physics might not actually impact your political effectiveness, or a captivating media personality, or an activist virtue signaling person, but it absolutely does lend itself towards exploitation. Global warming is in many issues a dream issue for environmentalists, for media figures, for politicians, and the like. If the crisis is true, it gives them license to commandeer the entirety of the energy sector. And since energy is, aside from human capital, the master resource that enables all other resource use. It is the beating heart of modern economies and society more generally. So seizing influence over this issue is equivalent to dominating the commanding heights of the world. And even AOC's chief of staff came out and said that the Green New Deal, it wasn't originally a climate change thing at all. It was, we're really thinking of it as how do you change the entire economy kind of thing. So this AOC's chief of staff literally says this is just a way for them to justify implementing socialism. And climate alarmism is very profitable for politicians and the media, right? The media gets all of their funding from views, which is driven by scaremongering. It's driven by doom and gloom. It's driven by alarmism. They have to make you think, holy crap, this is an emergency. Pay attention to us. Here's our advertisers. Take a look over here. Yeah. Purchase this Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Whatever. So it actually is, it's a dream issue, and that's what kind of makes it a little susceptible. Here's what's wrong with the Paris Climate Accords. It doesn't actually do anything to address climate change. China is by far the world's largest emitter of CO2 emissions. They single-handedly are emitting like 25%. And the Paris Climate Accords tells them that they can set their own boundaries. And you know what their boundaries are? Well, maybe we'll lower it by 2025. Maybe we'll lower it by 2030, 2035. Maybe. But they don't do it. And they get a free pass. And I'll tell you why they get a free pass. The Bucky Dillon Show right here on 1360 KHNC.
Do you ever wake up and feel like there should be someone to run your errands? We want to get things done, but just don't have enough time. Many of us hire concierge services like dog walkers or food and grocery delivery. Why should your insurance needs be any different? At Badger Insurance Advisors, we act as your concierge for all things insurance, pairing quotes and prices, and recommending the best insurance for your needs. Call or text us today at 303-359-1799 or check us out at badgerinsuranceadvisors.com.
Hi, folks. I'm James Morgan, a realtor with Grisham & Associates, LLC. I know it must seem like there's a million realtors out there making all kinds of promises. Want to hear my big marketing promise? I promise honest and fair dealings with all those I do business with. That may sound old-fashioned, and it is not very catchy, but it is true. I am your Colorado real estate specialist. Farm, land, mountain cabins, or urban dwellings. When you work with my team, we'll get the right property for you and be upfront and honest with you every step of the way. Over the years, my clients have told me just that fact alone separates us from others in the industry. If you are considering buying or selling real estate, call me, James Morgan, at 720-203-0731 or visit my website at coloradoproperties.online. No catchy slogan, just a client-first, honest real estate experience. Hit it, girls.
Keep listening to the American Freedom Network.
You've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. You have to carefully monitor your health for the rest of your life. And you have an increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease.
Cut, take two, action.
You've been diagnosed with a new purpose, to fight for the amazing life you made for yourself. To look that risk of heart disease square in the face and say, no, not me. You've been given a new opportunity to live. Get started at nodiabetesbyheart.org.
Great minds think alike. Thank you for listening to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt. Join me, Larry Elder, today at 5 on 1360 KHNC. Now back to Bucky Dillon.
All right, so China and the Paris Climate Accords. Why is it super lenient on them? Because they're responsible for 90% of the world's rare earth mineral mining, which is the primary ingredient in solar panels, right? Did you know? It's funny because when you criticize solar panels and wind turbines, you're often accused of being, like in league with the big scary Koch brothers. Did you know the primary entities in the supply chain for solar panels is China and the Koch brothers. Seriously. I mean, really. Did you know that the United States only produces about 15% of the world's carbon emissions? And despite a rapidly expanding economy during the Trump era, the US carbon emissions were going down. In fact, the United States has been leading the world in the reduction of carbon emissions, followed by Europe, but at a slower rate. This is regardless of our dismissal of the Paris Climate Accords. We were actually leading the world in the green energy CO2 reductions, irrespectively of the fact that we had abandoned the Paris Climate Accords. Because why should we be in it? It taxes us to the tune of trillions and hands it all over to China, which is responsible for, as of 2017, 27.2% of the world's carbon emissions. And they're building like 5 coal factories a day. Here's the thing. China wants to dominate the world, and they are not going to slow down for anything or anyone. And do you really think you're pursuing progressive values by handing the torch of global dominance over to China, where they're actively putting people in concentration camps? Think about it. Think about it. Top-down authoritarian control. You are not allowed to criticize the government because they might arrest and disappear you. You want to put them in charge in the name of being progressive? Come on, guys. Sounds like we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's on your mind today, Brian?
Hey, and this is Brian with a I as opposed to Brian with a Y, who's on the, he's one of the people on the show, on the station. China's been wanting to dominate the world for thousands of years, and they're kind of probably got a chip on their shoulder since they haven't been on top for a long time. What you just said, Uyghurs, those Muslims out in Western China, they're really under the gun. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm an older guy. I'm in my 70s. I've been, when I was younger, I was pretty much far left, and now I'm kind of back and forth. I voted for Trump this last election. I voted for Republican guys. I'm in Longmont locally. I voted locally. And, but then on the other hand, when I was younger, back in the 1980, I voted for an environmental guy. So, like I say, all over. The environment's important to me, but my granddad was a farmer. He worked till he was 80 years old. My dad died when he was 50, so, and I was only 17 then. But I think capitalism has some good points and has some bad points, and socialism, I can't figure out what that is, so I don't have any opinion solidified. But I like what you're doing, and I live in Longmont. My car's dead, so I won't be able to get up there Friday, but I like the station, and I listened to the whole first hour. That's the first time I've done that. Good show. I hope you keep it up. I guess that's all I got to say right now.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. Hey, if you had to make one criticism of the station that if we were to address would make the station better, and remember, this is not a safe space. Tell the genuine truth, otherwise it's worthless. What could we be doing better?
Well, I'm kind of a throwaway because I'm an older guy, and I think it's important that you do what you're trying to do, which is bring in people your own age and younger. But as much as I used to listen to Alex Jones a lot, and I still listen to him occasionally. I heard him earlier this evening. I'm up late at night, so I listen to reruns, the rebroadcast. and he brings out stuff. He does do what he says. He brings out stuff you don't hear anywhere else. But sometimes he exaggerates too much for me. I'm really glad that David Knight's going to be brought on. I really enjoyed him, and I think I really like what Joe does. Rick Rodriguez has a lot of good stuff, and so do what you're doing, and kind of everybody have a questioning ear for what Alex says, because sometimes he does that. In my opinion, allegedly, from my point of view, he exaggerates sometimes too much. You're doing great stuff. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for calling. Have a wonderful day, sir. So, wrong with the Paris Climate Accords is it lets China set their own rules and caters to them because they are responsible for so much of the rare earth mineral mining that makes solar technology possible. But I mean, here's the thing: a vast majority of these solar technologies actually rely on some of the most toxic substances known to man, and they're not that effective. They have found no correlation between countries implementing green energy technologies and utilizing less fossil fuels. Did you know that in order to regulate and keep the electrical current constant, they actually have to keep generators, regular fossil fuel generators, running 24/7 to stabilize the energy current coming through? And of course, it takes tremendous amounts of fossil fuels to mine, assemble, install, transport, and every other aspect of these green technologies.
Please work to abolish abortion, but reject all so-called pro-life efforts to regulate child killing. Even on the surface, regulations undermine the very concept of the right to life, and they convince even our own judges, tragically, that the fetus they consent to killing must not be a real child. See AmericanRTL.org/regulations for more.
Why does it seem America is slowly sinking? Whose fault is it? It's not the Obamas or the Clintons. It's not Republicans or Democrats. It's not corporations, the military, or foreign countries. It's the Federal Reserve, a central banking system made up of private bankers that corrupt and control virtually all aspects of the world's money supply and the economy. All of the major problems of the world can be traced to the Federal Reserve and central banks of other countries. Hi, I'm Jason with the Colorado Front Range News Hour. Catch my show with co-host Brian here on KHNC 3 to 4, Monday through Friday. We sell gold and silver, the best way to protect your hard-earned money. Call 800-951-0592 and keep those blood-sucking bankers out of your wallet.
All of the music for the Bucky Dillon Morning Show was provided by my band, Beer for Bears. Find us on social media by looking for Beer for Bears.
And same with wind technologies. You know, wind energy sounds really nice, but what are the processes that actually go into making wind turbines, and how efficient are they? Well, let's put out some numbers. Every single wind turbine needs 900 to 140 tons of steel and 2,500 tons of concrete to anchor them in the ground. Both steel and concrete are created by burning coal, not to mention the fuel and oil it takes to run the machines that dig out the ground, to transport the pieces, to assemble them, and to say nothing about anchoring wind turbines in the ocean. Wind turbines require massive clearing out of land to make room for them, and all of that is done with fossil fuel machineries. And guess what? These wind turbines, like any other machine with moving parts, actually requires oil lubrication. These machines require a fossil fuel-based generator idling 24/7 to regulate the energy supplied and compensate for the time when the wind is absent. They require the use of a chemical called sulfur hexachloride to mitigate the risk of fire inherent in the transistors required to regulate the flow of electricity. That chemical, sulfur hexachloride, is 23,000 times worse than CO2. And to top it off, these wind turbines only last about 20 years. And after that, they need to be removed again with massive fossil fuel based machinery. And the process starts all over. Oh, by the way, and they can't be recycled. So these wind turbine blades are just piling up and piling up and piling up in landfills all around the country. And I don't know if you guys heard, but they actually do kill birds. Now, I don't know about windmill cancer. I don't know about it, but they're not that great for the environment. So what's the problem with the Keystone XL pipeline? Is it actually doesn't reduce our dependency on oil. It just outsources our dependency to countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia. Now, what's better for the environment, to spill oil into the dirt of South Dakota, or to have an oil tanker spill over or be leaking the entire time as it crosses the entire Atlantic Ocean, where it's so drastically harder to clean up, and we're sending our money over to countries that are not progressive, I'll put it that way. Do we really want our country to be dependent on Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China for our energy? Does that seem like a legitimate way to pursue liberal values? I don't think so. Here's the deal. Fossil fuels, oil, is used for essentially everything we utilize in our modern life. From shaping steel, from plastic, from rubber, concrete, asphalt. Look around you. Do you see anything that's made with plastic, steel, concrete, glass? Gosh, you might be looking around and saying, yeah, just about literally everything around me is either made from wood or those products. So you're either chopping down trees, which absorb CO2, or you're burning fossil fuels, which emit it. But wind energy can't make plastic. Sorry, guys. I hate to put it out there like that. One strategy we could implement that actually would reduce the carbon emissions and the pollution going on in the world would actually be to export natural gas to countries that are relying heavily on coal and biomass. This would actually strengthen our economy. It would strengthen our energy independence. It would keep us dominant over China and Russia and Saudi Arabia, which would be good for progressive values, civil rights, democracy. And it would actually reduce the carbon emissions that are being emitted by countries that are relying on much dirtier and less efficient fuels. So there are ways for us to address this. And like I said, the United States has been leading the world in the reduction of carbon emissions already. So let's try to not act so silly. Let's try to not be so much at each other's throats, and let's try to make progress for the world. Guys, I love you. Have a wonderful day. It's great to be here with you. You're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show.
Remember to avoid, distance, and alienate yourself from friends, family, and neighbors. That way, when the crisis is over, no one will ask you to help them move, to borrow money, or bother you for a cup of sugar ever again. After all, who needs community anyway? This has been a public service announcement. Have a lovely day.
Have you always wanted to be on the radio? Do you have strong opinions or ideas that you think should be heard? Why not host your own radio show right here on the Roar of the Rockies? You'll be on the same station as Brian Kilmeade, Michael Savage, and Alex Jones. You can brand yourself as an expert in your industry and grow your business. Imagine telling your potential clients you have your own radio show. That gives you instant credibility. For more information, call us at 970 587